Hello, everyone. Welcome to BowTieSecurityGuy After Dark. With me today is Monica Royal. I started following Monica's stuff and checking out the content that she was posting and her kind of data-driven slant to security. And I wanted to have you come on and kind of share your journey. So, can you tell us a little bit about kind of your journey into technology and cyber and what you currently do?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show. So excited to be here. So background, how I got into cyber is through my first career as an IT auditor. And so in that space, as an auditor, you're testing out things to make sure that the company is in compliance with all of the regulations and whatnot. But with IT auditors, we get to really focus on kind of that IT and security landscape to make sure that, say, like the systems are properly configured. You changed your server default password from password 123 and etc. Right? So we got in there and just testing out things like that.
What kind of led you down that path? Were you in like technology early on, or did you make kind of the pivot into technology? And what was that catalyst for you?
Yeah, so kind of odd. We'll back up. In high school, I really enjoyed math. And so I was given the advice to go to college and get an accounting degree. And so I did that. I was young and just doing what I was told. And too far into it, I realized this really does not have anything to do with math as much as I would like. But there were some classes that I took that were technology involved. It was like a accounting systems class. And so I went to my counselor and I was like, hey, I don't want to give up what I'm doing, but I kind of want to change it a bit. Can you help me out? And they were like, oh, there's this, whole auditing specifically for IT field that you can get into. And I added management information systems. So it's like the business version of computer systems. So I had two majors, accounting and MIS, and that's what got me into my career as an IT auditor.
I always find it interesting because everyone has that story. It's like, I really wasn't planning on it. And then I kind of fell into it. For me, I've always been into technology and stuff, but I think falling into a technology job is exactly that. Like, I didn't necessarily go and chase it. It was one of those things where someone's like, hey, you should do this as a job. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that would be cool. And then once I found out that I could do like the stuff I used to do as a black hat hacker when I was younger, like, and people would pay me to do that in real life, I was like, wait a minute, hang on. You can get paid to do that? Social engineering is a job? So like you become a professional liar and somebody pays you, but the audit side is so data driven and data focused. What are some of the things that you see as kind of common mistakes that people make when they're working with an auditor? Because I've done my fair share of working with auditors, and I'm very detail oriented, and I have a ton of like documentation and process driven stuff. They're normally floored by that. Is that kind of
Yeah,
uncommon?
I was just gonna say, hands down, documentation is where everybody kind of lacks. That's the first question we come in and we want to see your processes and what you do, your policies to understand the work that you do so that we can test that work and make sure that it, meets different regulations and benchmarks and stuff, right? But when they come back and say, oh, well, we kind of don't have detailed documentation, then it makes the job a little bit more complicated and you have to do interviews and walkthroughs and, try to understand what they do in a different way.
That explains why my experience with auditors is very different than everyone else's. I, I I honestly, until this moment, like I just assumed they were going lax on me, but they're so used to people not having anything that when somebody has a clear defined process for everything, I would say it's like my obsession, like my OCD is like very much heavy documentation. Anyone's on my team learns very quickly like, hey, is that process documented? Cool. No, we're doing that now. Because if you want to move on with your career or if you want to move into a new role, like I don't want to have to worry about what's in your head. I want to be able to just say, cool, have fun. How can I support you get there? You know,
Exactly.
I feel like a lot of the things that we did in technology where people hoarded knowledge specifically to kind of for job security. And I feel like that's where it kind of came from. Why do you think people don't really document the processes and procedures? That's my theory, is that they're just like that cardinal knowledge they believe is some sort of security blanket from, from a job security perspective. But what are your thoughts?
I think now it's due to the pace of the work, right? So you're constantly being put on new projects and having to get things done faster, and you don't have the time to really sit down and document the things that you're doing because you've already been put onto a new project. So I do think it has a lot to do with the time that it takes.
That makes complete sense too, just the constant shift of priorities. I do like if you look at AI, I do feel like that is a great tool to utilize to kind of get you started on creating documentation. You don't have to write the entire book yourself. You can really just put in what you're trying to accomplish. And many times, what a ChatGPT or a Gemini or Copilot or something, what will kick out is good enough to kind of at least get you started, and then you just fine tune it for your environment. Do you see people utilizing AI more within this field where they're looking to kind of create that documentation, or is it still kind of very human driven?
100% yes. I've been seeing audit teams leveraging AI during meetings. Full transparency at the beginning, saying like this meeting is being recorded for the purposes of it to be summarized afterwards. And then they go through their walkthroughs and their interviews to capture those processes. And I think that's a great way to leverage AI for documentation purposes.
That's actually really clever. That's a good use case for it. And just because that note taking can be very tedious, especially when you have a lot of technical people on the phone. Um, Anyone who's
Yes.
gone through an audit, it can be a very lengthy process. But if you don't have documentation, I imagine, like you said, it's kind of a nightmare process because you've either got to create it or explain everything in very large detail. There's a lot of these schools and stuff that have popped up over the last several years that are like, become an IT auditor and, pay us 20 or $50,000. Um, what are your thoughts on those? You're somebody who's in the field who I think is awesome because you share a ton of your stuff, and feel free to plug where you share that. And you share it for free or a small price, like comparatively to the market. Like, that's awesome, but I know some of these people are very vultures as where they're like guaranteeing you jobs. Are there like a ton of auditor jobs out there, or is that just another ploy?
I mean, it depends on what company that you're working for. If companies have to adhere to regulations, then they have, larger internal audit departments. Then you're seeing a lot of advisory services like consultant companies and whatnot providing those types of services as well. Um, I do see a lot of the auditor positions being available.
Do you feel like it's a hard role to fill, or is it hard to find somebody who has the mindset to want to do it?
I think it's more the mindset to want to do it. Whenever anybody, at least from my experience, whenever anybody hears the word auditor, they kind of shut down. They're like, oh my gosh, here we go again. So being an auditor is you're kind of not very much liked by other people, because we're kind of seen as like the rule, the checkbox, and we got to make sure everyone's abiding by the rules and all of that. But but we're here to help. You know what I mean? We're here to help the company. We're all on the same team, especially with the IT auditors. We just want to make everyone secure, right? The company and the employees, right? And also the customers, obviously. But yeah, it's just an uh interesting that, folks think of auditors in, not so great ways.
Do you feel that it's one of those things where you kind of have to have thick skin because everyone comes at you kind of more aggressively than intended, maybe?
Thick skin, and also you have to not be afraid of bugging people, right? So there's been so many times where I have to send several follow-up emails because I'm still waiting on documentation or I'm waiting on a data set so I can perform my tests. And I still haven't had it yet. And we're all on timelines, of course, because they're doing their day job, but I can't do anything on my end unless they give me what they have to give me. And so it's like, just, I'm sorry to bug you again, but can I please have what I asked for?
Just a friendly reminder, I'm not going away.
Yes.
I will keep staying here and being here. This is an area of security or just technology that I think can be very foundational for a security professional because it teaches you so much about a business and how to use data, how to analyze data. I also feel like this could prepare you for like a SOC role or other roles within technology because that research process that you have to go through is very similar to what you would do in an investigation. Do you agree that that's kind of the right mindset to have? I feel like it's very data driven and very like research heavy.
Absolutely. I think it also allows you to move pretty much anywhere within the company because as an auditor, your job's kind of like a consultant, right? You're working with pretty much every single department within the company and you're learning from a very deep level how that department works, how it should work, what problems they're facing on a constant basis. So say I would audit the cybersecurity department, like the security awareness training, specifically that area quite often. And I had made a move at one time in that department to help with some behavioral analytics.
So you've done that. You've been working in that field for a long time. What made you decide to do kind of your data-driven podcast or your data podcast for nerds? Like, uh, how did that even come about? Like for me, it was people just saying, "Hey, you should do a podcast," and I finally was like, "I guess I'll do a podcast." Um, and I wanted to showcase kind of the job and what different skills, what different jobs are out there for cyber professionals. So people can understand that you don't just have to do the flashy cool stuff. There's a lot of opportunity within the space. But what inspired you to become like a quasi influencer and get into this whole like influencer game?
Yeah. So, kind of very similar to your story, and I just wanted to share how many different ways that you can leverage data and analytics in your role. So when I was an IT auditor, a lot of the stuff that I first did was very manual. It was a lot of manual testing. And further on in my career, I kind of stumbled on data analytics and found a way to leverage that to make my testing easier. And so from then, I just, started firing in my head like, oh my gosh, data is everywhere. You can apply data analytics pretty much in any position. And as I was, testing all of these different departments, I saw how they use data in their jobs as well. So fast forward to me starting my podcast, it's very career focused and it helps out with my career coaching where I'm just highlighting how many ways you can use data to solve the world's problems, as I say. And yeah, just, sharing tips and tricks and nerdy fun bits and just highlighting the awesomeness of data.
You mentioned that you were doing, kind of career coaching. I know from my own experience, mentoring is something that's kind of helped me grow exponentially as like a just a human. Because when you start seeing things from other people's point of view, and you really start to understand some of the struggles that people have, I think it makes you a more effective, not only a leader, but also just a more effective mentor. The more pieces of insight that you get, do you feel like that there's a specific type of person that reaches out for mentoring, or is it just anyone who's kind of reached out based on like they hit a certain point? I always find it interesting to see what triggers somebody to kind of chase mentors, because I started doing it because I was kind of lost. I didn't understand a lot of things. I had a lot of problems understanding just human emotion and things like that. So I would have a lot of conversations, and I didn't even really look at it as a mentor-mentee relationship for the longest time. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh wait, like you're a mentor of mine. Like it started to really dawn on me, and I was like, I want to do this for people. Is that what inspired you to start coaching? And talk about your business name and stuff, what you do and how people can find you too, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the most active on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me there. And I have a brand called Nourishment, and that is where I'm delivering career coaching specifically for folks that are transitioning their careers. Right. So they already have been in the workforce and they really want to start leveraging data analytics or maybe even transfer into a data analyst role. And so, what kind of inspired me to help those folks was from my experience, right? So, I was just an auditor and found a way to leverage data analytics in my role. And so, really, with the podcast and my career coaching, I'm trying to help out the other Monicas in the world trying to do the same thing. And to answer your question, what types of people I've seen reach out are those that don't know where to start or need help kind of building out a roadmap or just figuring out what they need to learn because especially in the data space there's so many buzzwords and advice going around on like you need to learn this tool in this programming language, etc. But it's not always the same for every case, right? It depends on what type of role that you're trying to get or what type of company that you're trying to work for. So a lot of my career coaching is very individualized based on the people.
Is it an entry level friendly field? Do you see people being able to go from like, working retail and then deciding to get into this if they have the right mindset for it?
There are a ton of transferable skills. And so, if you are able to figure out how to highlight those transferable skills, you are able to then say you're transferring from retail into a data analyst role. You're able to bring with you domain knowledge that, say, somebody coming from university doesn't quite have because they haven't had real life experience yet. Right. And I've seen the folks that leverage that subject matter expertise or the domain knowledge really succeed in that data analyst role.
It's like as long as you have the mind for it, I think it's a great opportunity for anyone, especially with new people. If you like researching, if you like kind of solving puzzles, if you like digging deep, it's almost the way I look at auditing is almost like an incident response type role, but you do it before an attacker has done something bad, right? You're going through saying, how can we get better? How can we get smarter? Are we doing the right things to ensure it? And make sure that we're being secure. And then kind of the trust but verify method, right? Where it's like, while I believe you, you need to show me that you're actually accomplishing these things. Have you seen situations that where people have maybe not given full information or leave details out kind of specifically where you have to dig a little deeper? And how do you go about digging deeper without insulting someone? I find that kind of process. It's like, hey, what you provided me is kind of good, but I also don't fully trust you. So can you tell me a little bit more? I think that's just such an interesting mindset to have because when you mentioned you kind of go into this as an underdog, as somebody who's not liked. You're basically an adult hall monitor who's coming in telling them to stop running. It's like, hey, you shouldn't be running here. You have this instant negative relationship before you even get to a word out.
Yeah.
That's got to be a hard uphill battle to kind of win hearts and minds to get people to trust you that you're not here to make them look bad. You're here to make them smarter.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely difficult. I think mostly because not that you ever question what they give you with the documentation or even through the walkthrough or the interview. It's the fact that they tell you what they do in their job, and then you say, okay, now I need to test what you just said is what's actually happening. And so that's where you deep dive into like, okay, you said that you terminate when employees are terminated from the company, they're removed from the system within 24 hours. All right, let's go test that. Let's see if
Like,
that's true.
yeah,
And
no,
in most
essence,
cases,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
absolutely not true.
It's like, but we wrote it down. We wanted to manifest it being real without actually implementing it.
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I wonder if it's somebody wrote the policy a long time ago. No one ever validated it. And then it's like, oh, well, we thought Jim was handling that. And it's like, no, 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 I thought Dave was handling that. And then nobody really knows who's handling it.
Yeah,
That's
there's
really
so much that's involved in that. Either, you don't know who's doing it, or there's some kind of workaround that needed to be applied for that specific situation. Oh, they still needed access because, they were technically working for another week or so, like whatever, or they backdated or something like that. There's always like one-off situations that
like
occur.
weird caveats to every possible
Yeah.
situation.
That's where the research comes into play. So definitely a lot of research.
Do you do a lot of research outside the job too? Like, what is the work-life balance? I would think the work-life balance is pretty solid, right? You're working normal hours in most cases, and then are you done there, or do you take a lot of stuff home where you start to do research to understand maybe a product better or things better?
So, um, as an auditor, you do very much have work-life balance. You're not on call or anything like that, right? Um, but if you do have like a CPA or a CISA, like myself, you have to have CPE or continued professional education credits that you have to gain on a yearly basis to basically keep up to date with things that are going on in that field or in your related field and security and all of that, right? So there is outside research there if you want to attend conferences or take courses online, whatever you're doing to basically keep up to date with those different regulations and what's going on in the world.
It's like every job in technology is that constant learning. If you're not a fan of constant learning and always kind of, learning the latest tools, the latest software, the latest things, uh, this job is not going to be great for you.
Yeah.
It'll be a struggle every day. What is, and I don't even know if you can talk to this, but maybe you can. What is the like entry level salary range for somebody coming into this field? I know a lot of people enter cyber and they think the money's kind of crazy. It
Mhm.
was for a while. It is very much not anymore. Your entry level role for a cyber gig is around 50 to 80,000. Are you seeing similar within the data analytics space, or is it higher in certain cases?
It is similar. It's
Yeah.
50 to 70 depending on where you're located and what company you're working for.
That I feel is a good reality to a lot of people listening to this who are in college and, they're telling them these six-figure jobs are waiting for you and you just got to get your degree. I feel terrible when I talk to those kids. And they're like, well, I've applied for a bunch of places. And I was like, okay, well, there's 1,700 other people who've applied for it. But I do, see a lot of audit roles that remain open, and I wonder if it's just because of the mental kind of you gotta be mentally hard to, I think, handle you're going into a situation at a disadvantage where people don't like you and people don't want to work with you, and you've got to not only win them over, you've got to get them to be honest with you, you've got to get them to open up to you, and you've got to get them to trust that you're there for the right reasons. That is a very hard job. I mean, it
Yeah.
just is.
Yeah.
Do
And
you?
plus, I think people think it's boring. It's maybe financial auditors are a bit more boring, but IT auditors, that's where you get some pretty good projects. I've been on some social engineering pen testing projects while I was an IT auditor. That's where the fun stuff comes in. But yeah, I feel like it 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 gets looked at as boring as well.
I think compliance in general, or anything that has to do with regulation or compliance, gets looked at that way. But it is the foundation of security, and audit is the kind of the validation of your methods. And it's there for a reason because it's easy to make mistakes. And it's not even that it's malicious or like you talked about earlier, people just get busy. Right? They may have written that policy a while ago. That doesn't necessarily mean they actually follow it. Because they've drifted away from that mindset a long time ago, or maybe the tool that did it previously broke and nobody could fix it. Auditors are there for that check and balance to say, yep, you're secure. Now let's test that you're secure. You're almost like the pen testers of data and data analytics, right? You're validating whether or not their statements are true, not from a sense of we think you're a liar, but from a sense of do you actually know if you're following those processes? I've been part of audits where because I did a little auditing when I was at Disney and I helped the audit team out, and there was some interesting things where we would tell somebody something, we'd be like, can you show us that? And they're like, yeah, of course I can. Then they look it up and they go, oh, you know what? I guess we're not doing it. I I don't know when that stopped, but we should probably fix that immediately. I really see companies make those mistakes and not think things through and kind of recheck what they've done. In technology, we're always like, oh, what have you done for me lately? And we don't always look back. And like you said, that documentation part of that is looking back. It's taking a moment to actually document what you've learned and kind of move forward. So you've got a good work-life balance. Sounds like a pretty sweet gig. We know that there's a decent amount of openings within the field. Some of them entry level, most of the ones I've seen are not. But what is somebody, if they wanted to go into this type of field, what do you recommend to them? And of course, taking your career coaching would be the best advice because they can get a customized approach to that fits for them. But in lieu of that, what are the kind of building blocks for a career in auditing?
I would say if you're really organized and you can pay attention to details, then you'll be able to get ahead of the game. Also, if you can kind of think outside the box, think of different situations that might occur. Um, yeah, just thinking outside of the box in that respect, right? And then if you like to problem solve. And then also a little bit of if you like, testing people, I suppose. But um, Yes, problem solving, being organized. If you enjoy like watching mystery movies or anything like that, that kind of gets your brain going in detective mode. I feel like being an auditor is kind of like being a detective. You're trying to find where things are going wrong, but then you're also able to figure out how to make those wrong things right.
That I love that detective mentality. I feel like security in general is basically any role that you get into has an element of that. Whether it's incident response, whether it's pen testing, even coding, you're trying to kind of solve a problem. That I think is the crux, is if you like to solve problems and analyze issues, it's a good, if you're somebody who puts detail oriented on your resume, this might be a good, this might be a good gig for you. But it's an option for people that is a good entry level role that will give you a lot of foundational knowledge. You'll learn stuff on the fly, and you'll be forced to elevate your knowledge on different products, different services, different things to be a better auditor. Do you think you need the technical skills, or do you just need the ability to ask questions and follow probing questions to come to like a conclusion? I feel like the latter. I feel like if you can ask the right questions, you don't need to be super technical.
I
Um,
agree. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely asking the right questions. What I learned early on is you never ask a question that could be answered with a yes or a no.
yes or a no. Yeah.
You need to have them explain to you specifically what's going on, what might be wrong, what might be right, etc. But just the yes, no is not going to get you where you need to be as an auditor.
Does a college degree get a better position you for a job, or is this one of those gigs that if you've got the aptitude and you can put the right work in as far as like that detective skill and that analytics, it's one of those with a high school education you're able to kind of get a gig in, or do they really focus on higher education as a as an entry?
I feel more and more jobs are requiring the bachelor or above level of education. I feel that your college degree doesn't quite matter on, what career you're going to get into in the
Yeah.
future. I feel like with the university, what they're doing is they're teaching you how to learn, right? So you're basically learning how to learn. And being an audit, that's fantastic because almost every project you have to learn a new process, you have to learn a new department. Right. So you're constantly learning new things. So in the university, you have due dates for certain papers, et cetera, right? Much like being an auditor, you have due dates for your audits to be completed. So you need to learn really quickly from ground up and then do your work and complete it within that time frame. So I think that in itself relates to how you learn in university.
Yeah, I mean, I would say then in that case, college is basically like your master's in education to become an auditor, because all the things you talked about that's the job. So if you loved college and you loved, you know, chasing down deadlines and learning things really quickly, I feel like auditing would be a great opportunity for you. That explains why I've vehemently avoided it, just because I'm not an education per. I like learning, but I like learning only what I care about when I have to learn stuff.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, there's some processes that, your eyes start to glaze over and you have to pay attention because you have to test this later, right? So you definitely have to, learn the boring stuff too, really quickly.
That ability to learn, I know for me being neurospicy, like the obsessiveness that I get when it's like I'm on an ADHD hyper focus. I feel like that's another great field career choice for neurospicy people, is this deep analytics role, which is data management and data analytics. So that's kind of awesome. I want to leave you a few minutes here to plug all your stuff, your shows, your podcasts, everything that you have, as well as your services. I don't expect people to come hang out here for free. I want you to at least get some visibility if I can provide it, because I love people who do what we're doing, which is just trying to share knowledge, help people, educate people, and work with them to help them grow. That's one of my favorite things. So tell us where we can find you and all the different stuff. I know you're on YouTube, so plug your channel.
Yes. So, again, very active on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there first. And I offer career coaching services for folks that are transitioning careers. I also love helping out audit teams try to leverage data analytics to help their audits. I have a YouTube, Nourishment, that's my brand, and that's where all of my podcast episodes and other fun videos are located. I'm also an instructor with LinkedIn Learning. I do have a couple courses. Out there and ready to be out there someday. So if you want to learn more about data security and auditing, you can check those out. And my podcast, it's called Data Podcast for Nerds. Again, on YouTube and all of the streaming platforms.
Love it. Absolutely love it. You're one of the real ones where if somebody invests in you for career coaching, I know you're going to invest in them. There's so many people who are like, pay me $2,000, and then they send you some AI garbage. They don't put any effort into it. I know just from the person you are and from our interactions that that's not you. So if somebody's looking to invest in their career and they're looking to make that pivot and they need somebody to kind of help walk them through that audit path, I highly recommend Monica. Just because one, she's super fun to work with. Her prices are very fair, and it's tailored to you, and it's somebody who actually genuinely cares about your success. So thank you so much for coming to hang out. I appreciate that. Please, of course, check out my stuff. I don't care if you like or subscribe. It doesn't really matter to me, but I hope that you do. And if there's something of value, please share it with others so we can help as many people as possible. And good luck out there.